Guys, what's going on? Guys, I've been told to make this video. I didn't really want to make this video because I think it's a bit of a farce. I've been told for a couple of weeks now to give my take on this, but I kind of resisted. I couldn't be arsed with it. But I thought I'd do it because I've been getting some requests on Instagram. Apparently, there's been a lot of talk about Canelo Alvarez fighting Kamaru Usman. And Kamaru and Eddie Hearn actually mentioned it in an interview. He said, I would love to make the Usman fight. I don't think it would last very long. Usman's manager, Ali Abdulaziz, came out and said that Kamaru Usman would knock out Canelo Alvarez in 3 rounds. But that sounds a bit misleading. He said Canelo Alvarez, the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. And how can he be the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world when if they were fighting on the street, Usman would absolutely destroy. They say Canelo's the most feared man in boxing, or most feared man, or something like that. And then he goes that, well, on the street, Kamaru Usman would easily kick his butt, basically, and knock him out. I don't know why these UFC fighters seem to have a superiority where they feel like, yeah, we'll bang you out. You guys don't really fight a real fight. We'll bang you out if it comes to a street fight. At the end of the day, no sport happens in the street, right? Kamaru Usman don't fight in a street, right? He fights in a ring or in an octagon with rules. Canelo Alvarez fights in the ring with rules. He's a prize fighter. He gets paid a lot of money. A lot of these UFC fighters seem to think that, oh yeah, we're more manly. We'll batter you. We'll do this. We'll do that. At the end of the day, no fighter at the level of Canelo Alvarez is going to come to the UFC because UFC fighters don't get paid that much. Let's be brutally honest. Their pay is capped. There's no way Canelo Alvarez is going to go. Why would Canelo Alvarez go to octagon or fight as Usman in the street? What does he gain from that? To show I'm harder than you in the street. What was that? What's that all about? What you gotta gain? Like a lot of these UFC fighters, they have because they don't get paid as much. Oh yeah, we're harder than you, we're tougher than you, we'll knock you out if it was a proper fight. McGregor said that to Mayweather. Oh yeah, if we have a street fight, we'll knock you out, we'll do this, we'll do that. At the end of the day, things don't happen in the street, they happen in rules. That's why it's a sport. If things start happening in the street, then it's not a sport. It's just, whoever beats whoever up. There's no rules. When it's in a street fight, there's no rules. Anything goes. Boxing is a sport. UFC is a sport. There's rules. There's certain things you cannot not do, and there's fighter safety. Those rules are there to protect the fighter. So I find it really absurd when I hear UFC fighters, yeah, we're tougher than these guys. If it was in a street fight, we'll crack their neck. We'll do this, we'll do that. Come on, man, let it go. Let it go, right? Look, I'm not interested in Canelo Alvarez with Kamaru Usman because that fight would happen in a boxing ring. There's no way Canelo would go and fight Kamaru Usman in a UFC fight. It's just stupid. He wouldn't do it for no matter how much money, because Kamaru Usman would destroy Canelo inside an octagon, and Canelo Alvarez would absolutely obliterate Kamaru Usman inside a ring. It's just not. It's two different sports. It's like a badminton player and a tennis player combining and saying, well, you know what, I'll play you in a tennis match. The badminton players say, I'm playing you in a test match. Tennis players say, I'll play you in badminton. Two different sports. Just because they're hitting rackets, just because it's fighting, doesn't mean it's two different sports. Usman would get Canelo down to the ground in an octagon, and Canelo Alvarez would just batter Usman because he's a better, Kamaru Usman isn't anywhere near the striker. Like they call it striking in UFC. Canelo Alvarez is a boxer. He uses his hand. He doesn't use his feet. He doesn't use anything else. He just uses his hands. That's what Canelo's known for. He's not a grappler or wrestler. That's not what Canelo's known. Canelo's known for his boxing. So if Usman was to come inside a boxing ring, Canelo Alvarez would hurt him. It'd be dangerous. I think it's absurd when people actually say these things. Like, does Ali Abdulaziz, who's a manager, surely he cannot actually believe that he thinks that Kamaru Usman would beat Saul Canelo Alvarez inside a boxing ring when there's great fighters, world champions that can't do it. It's absurd to think that guys like McGregor and these type of guys can cross over and beat some of the box. They're not. These guys haven't got the grounding. They're not boxers. They're not boxers. Just because you're a fighter doesn't mean you can box. It's a completely different sport. Like I said, just because it's a racket game doesn't mean a tennis player can go and play badminton. It's a completely different, I'm pretty sure that, listen, they may be okay, their hand-eye coordination and the way they move their wrists and stuff, but it's a completely different game. The ball's different. Everything's different. The racket's different. The same way the gloves are different. You're basically disabling a UFC fighter by not allowing him to kick, by not allowing him. Now he just needs now he can only use his hands. And it becomes difficult for them. Also, it's very tiring. When you're just using your hands, it becomes very tiring as well. And a lot of these guys will be missing. Remember when Floyd fought McGregor? Floyd was like messing around. I don't know what he was doing, but Floyd was kind of messing around, really. And he was old, kind of past his best. But we're talking about Canelo in his prime against Kamaru Usman. That would be dangerous. It's all right Floyd fighting these guys when he's past his best and he's just doing it for a bit of dough. That's different. But you're not putting a prime guy in a ring with a boxer. They'll get hurt, especially someone like Canelo. He can punch. So I find it absurd that there's actually people out there that think that Kamaru Usman could beat Canelo Alvarez inside a boxing ring. And there are people may think, like, within boxing, we know that there's no chance. But there are people out there that actually believe that Kamaru Usman could beat Canelo Alvarez. I'm being serious. Don't think there isn't. There are people out there that think that he can. Trust me when I say that. There are people out there that think that Canelo Alvarez would get beat by Kamaru Usman. I'm serious. There's people out there. As absurd as it sounds, there's people out there. And UFC and boxing, let me clear this, are two different sports. They're not similar. And all this stuff about all this tough talk about fighting in the street, you can forget about it. You're not fighting in the street. Yeah, if Usman gets Canelo in a headlock or get him some, yeah, but they're not fighting in the street. Canelo's not going to be stupid to go and fight a guy in an octagon. Why is Canelo making what? $60 million every fight? Why the hell is he going to go and fight an octagon for where there's not even that much money? How much money has Kamaru Usman made in his last 3 or 4 fights? Compare that to how much money Canelo's made in his last 3 or 4 fights. So when these UFC fighters, you guys aren't even fighting real fights. We're fighting real fights. I feel like it's a bit of jealousy as well because the boxers are earning a lot more money. The top boxers, the really, really top boxers are earning more money than UFC fighters. Full stop. You can't compare the purse of Tyson Fury and Francis Ngannou. You can't compare the purse of Kamaru Usman and Canelo Alvarez. It's chalk and cheese. We've already seen it that the difference in pay is massive. So Canelo Alvarez doesn't need to go inside an octagon and show how tough he is against Usman and have a real fight. His sport is paying him more than the sport that Usman is involved in. And in terms of Usman knocking Canelo out in 3 rounds, you might as well forget about it. You might as well forget about it. Canelo would dust Usman off. He'd knock Usman out inside a boxing ring when he wants to. Look, right? Tyron Woodley, who was a great fighter at UFC, great UFC welterweight champion, right? He got beat by a guy who's basically a hot prospect in boxing, Jake Paul. Jake Paul is basically a hot prospect. He's up and coming kind of fighter, right? And he's not even a guy that's gone through the amateur system. He hasn't even got a great amateur pedigree, Jake Paul. And he knocked Tyron Woodley out cold. That just tells you how bad these guys are when it comes to boxing. That this is a UFC champion. This is a guy that's a legend in the UFC, Tyron Woodley. And he's been iced by Jake Paul. It just shows you that these guys aren't boxers. They're not boxers. They're good at what they do, but they're not boxers. Jake Paul would beat Kamaru Usman easy inside a boxing ring. I even think Jake Paul beats Conor McGregor. I think quite easily. Quite easily. Jake Paul would beat Conor McGregor. Let alone Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez would... He'd do a demolition job on these guys, man. You know, people got to understand these are two different sports. Two completely different sports, like tennis and badminton. You can't compare the two sports. It's two different sports. You know, Canelo's not going to waste his time. And the thing is, Canelo will probably be open to it. If it's boxing, he'll say, yeah, easy money. Canelo doesn't strike me the type of guy that would want to do something like that. He's more concerned about securing his legacy. But I just find it kind of bizarre that actually people actually buy into these type of ideas. People buy into the fact that they actually think Kamaru Usman would have a chance of beating Canelo. Like, for me, it's a bit of a circus. And I actually think it'd be dangerous. I actually think Usman fighting Canelo is actually dangerous. Because that's not like Floyd and Conor McGregor. That's dangerous. You know, Canelo's in his prime. So if that fight was to happen in the next 1 year or 2 years, for example, that's dangerous. That shouldn't even be allowed. You know, because this isn't a badminton match or the tennis match where they're having a crossover where no one's going to get hurt. You're putting a guy that's skilled to fight in that specific field against the guy that's not skilled. Because Kamaru Usman, right, is basically like a guy off the street when you put him against. Like, he might be a fighter. It's like being a fighter in a completely different sport. It's completely different to being inside a boxing ring. The skill set is completely different. It's the skill set are completely different. Even the way these guys punch, right? They have nowhere near the power that a boxer has in their punches. You can just tell when you see them fight. And again, I'll say it again, the gloves. These guys wear like small gloves in UFC. When they have to put on those big boxing gloves, it becomes awkward. Look at Conor McGregor when he was doing his shadow boxing with the boxing glove. Like, it just looked so awkward. He didn't look right doing what he was doing because they're not used to wearing big gloves. They're used to striking with small gloves. When they have to put on big gloves, 8, 10-ounce gloves or whatever, it's not the same. It's not the same. It's like I said, it's like you're giving a tennis player a badminton racket. It's completely different. And then you're also hitting a shuttlecock, which is completely different. That's the point I'm trying to make. It's a completely different sport. The equipment's different. You know, the gloves that you have to put on in boxing, it's completely different. And by the way, it doesn't matter. Even if Canelo Alvarez was to wear those gloves, right? The ones that they wear in the UFC, he'd still beat Kamaru Usman in a boxing fight. Like, if they were to wear the UFC style gloves, right, in a boxing ring, Kamaru Usman would just get hurt more because there's less padding, so Canelo would hurt him more. That would be dangerous. That's why do you think that boxers don't wear, they have 8-ounce or 10-ounce gloves? Because they know that if they have those small UFC gloves, fighters will be getting injured and getting hurt all the time. Those gloves are there for the protection of the fighters. You know, so yeah, man, I don't really endorse these type of fights because I think it's dangerous and I think it's not a contest. I think Canelo Alvarez would absolutely obliterate Kamaru Usman. But leave your thoughts, guys. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And guys, remember to please like, share, subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.